Did you know that a CPU nowadays can cost you up to $1,000? My name's Alex Martinez, and I'm going to tell you how to install a CPU correctly without damaging it. Now, what you'll need is one, a CPU, a motherboard, a CPU cooler, some fans. Well, the fans are optional depending on your CPU cooler. You'll need some rubbing alcohol, some paper towels, a screwdriver, and some thermal paste. Now, step one to installing a CPU is locating this little locator triangle that is on the CPU. Now, in my case, it's at this very corner. Now, every CPU will have a different type of way of telling you which orientation to install it. In my case, this is a Ryzen 7, which is made by AMD. And another thing is you have to make sure the CPU and the motherboard are compatible. In my case, the CPU has a AM4 chipset, and so does the motherboard. A great website to check this on is partpicker.com. Partpicker will let you collect a bunch of parts and tell you if they're compatible or not. It's a really great resource to use. Now, once you've located the little golden triangle on the corner of your CPU, you're going to want to find the little triangle on the motherboard chip, like the socket. Then you're going to want to lift this little retaining lever and line up the two triangles. Just like that. You're going to want to give it a little shake to make sure it's in there, and then put the retaining lever down. Now the retaining lever might have a little bit of tension on it. That's fine. Everything's okay with it being a little bit of tension. Next step is to clean off the two surfaces. By two surfaces, I mean CPU and CPU. Now this is going to ensure that your CPU has proper cooling. And this is really important, because if you don't install a CPU cooler, your CPU will overheat very quickly, and you can even end up damaging it. Now thermal paste comes in a little tube, just like this, with a little nozzle. But first, let's clean off the surfaces. So take your isopropyl alcohol, put on a little piece of paper towel. I like to use paper towel because you can find it almost anywhere. You don't really need any special cloth. The isopropyl alcohol just lets it work anyway. So give your CPU a little wipe down, and grab your CPU cooler and also wipe down its contacting surface. Now for the thermal paste, you're going to want to put a pea-size amount of thermal paste. This will make sure that you have proper spread, and that will help with cooling even further. Just a little dot in the center is fine. If you have a spreader, you can use that as well, but it is not needed. Make sure to not put too much thermal paste, or else it will spread all over your motherboard and get everything messy. The next step is to mount the CPU cooler. Now, a lot of the motherboards have brackets pre-built onto them. Make sure you have the right bracket for your CPU cooler. So now we're going to just put the CPU cooler right on top. This will make sure that the thermal paste spreads out, and screw it. Now you could screw in these little fasteners on each side by hand, very gently. And you can move your little cooler around a little bit, just to make sure it's seated properly. Now you'll want to get your screwdriver and screw in each of these fasteners all the way. Now you want to make sure you do one side a little bit, and then move on to the other side. maybe a couple of turns, then move on to the other side, and keep repeating this until it is tightened all the way down. Now don't tighten it too much, or else you will break your motherboard. Now that these two bolts are all the way cinched down, you want to turn them back a quarter turn. This makes sure there's proper tension on the CPU and that all the connections are properly seated. The next step is to install your fans. Now, most CPUs or most CPU coolers will have fans pre-installed, but this is a bit of a fancier CPU cooler, so we're going to install these fans. Now, this fan goes on this side and has these little wire fastener things, and these just go around your CPU cooler, just like that. This other fan has the exact same thing. Just like that. Now, next step is to mount your wires. I've put these on in such a way that I already know where the wires go. But if you aren't sure, each wire connection will have 4 prongs and a little plastic tab in the back, which will line up with the plastic tabs on your connector. So just plug those in. And that's it. Now you're ready to install your motherboard and your and everything else into your case. An easy way to do this is just lifting up by your CPU cooler. It has a really good connection to the board, so it's a safe way of doing it. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned something. Have a good day.